Deep in the high desert of Nevada, where the wind scrapes across volcanic stone, lies a plateau that once guarded some of America's most classified nuclear experiments. This remote stronghold, known officially as Area 12, sits atop Rainier Mesa, a massive geological shield formed from ancient ash flows hardened over millions of years. From a distance, the mesa appears silent and untouched, yet beneath its rugged surface, engineers carved a hidden labyrinth of tunnels for Cold War nuclear research. Area 12 was never intended to be famous like Area 51, and its secrets were preserved not through myth but through dense rock, controlled access, and strict classification. The story of this forgotten facility begins in the early 1950s, when the United States sought safer methods to test nuclear devices without contaminating the atmosphere. Atmospheric detonations had produced iconic mushroom clouds, but they also released radioactive fallout that drifted over towns, farmlands, and distant regions. Scientists realized that to continue weapons development, the nation needed an underground environment where explosions could be fully contained within solid rock. Rainier Mesa offered a solution: thick volcanic tuff layers strong enough to absorb shockwaves and trap radioactive material deep below the desert surface. Engineers determined that horizontal tunnels could be driven into the mesa, allowing nuclear devices to be placed far from the open air yet still accessible by transport crews. Access roads were carved into steep canyon walls, and soon Camp 12 emerged as a functional base with dormitories, workshops, and support buildings for test personnel. Miners equipped with drilling rigs, explosives, and ventilation systems began cutting the first long tunnels into the mountain, establishing the backbone of Area 12 operations. These tunnels, each identified by coded designations like B-tunnel, C-tunnel, and D-tunnel, became the staging grounds for some of the earliest underground nuclear tests. The first major breakthrough came on September 19, 1957, when the U.S. conducted the Rainier test, the nation's first fully contained underground nuclear detonation. Unlike atmospheric shots that produced visible clouds, the Rainier test created only a seismic signature and a brief dust plume, proving containment was technically feasible. The success of this experiment transformed Rainier Mesa into a critical testing complex and set the foundation for decades of underground nuclear research. Inside the tunnels, crews constructed steel-reinforced alcoves, diagnostic stations, and instrument rooms where thousands of sensors waited to capture each test's data. Cable bundles extended for hundreds of yards, linking the shot point to remote trailers where scientists monitored pressure waves, particle emissions, and structural behavior. Tests were meticulously planned, with geologists analyzing fracture patterns and engineers calculating how much force the surrounding rock could safely withstand. Every underground detonation consumed months of preparation, demanding precision in drilling, stemming, instrumentation, and containment design to minimize risk. When a device finally detonated, the shock rippled through the stone, forming a spherical cavity deep inside the mesa, while instruments recorded split-second measurements. Surface observers rarely saw anything dramatic. Instead, they witnessed subtle movements, ground tremors, dust rising from fissures, or equipment responding to vibrations. Yet each event added to a growing scientific record that would shape U.S. nuclear policy, weapons engineering, and international detection capabilities for years to come. For workers stationed at Camp 12, the routine mixed ordinary industrial labor with the extraordinary reality of supporting nuclear experiments underground. Daily life included safety briefings, equipment checks, and transport runs between the camp and the tunnel portals carved like dark openings into the mesa walls. The remote setting demanded self-sufficiency, and crews often worked long hours in extreme conditions, balancing mining operations with national security pressures. Despite the isolation, morale remained steady, and many workers later recalled Area 12 as a place defined by professionalism, secrecy, and unwavering technical focus. To outsiders, the facility barely existed. Official documents referred to underground events, avoiding dramatic language while concealing the scope of the operations. Even today, much of what happened inside those tunnels remains stored in classified archives, known only through declassified summaries and geological reports. But enough information has surfaced to reveal the scale of the engineering effort that transformed Rainier Mesa into one of the most sophisticated testbeds of the era. Area 12's origins, shaped by scientific urgency and Cold War tension, laid the groundwork for a facility whose full story would unfold deep beneath the Nevada desert. The deeper the miners pushed into Rainier Mesa, the clearer it became that the underground environment demanded engineering solutions unlike any standard tunnel project. Each new section required reinforced arches, bolted rock ceilings, and ventilation systems powerful enough to clear dust generated by non-stop drilling operations. In long, dim corridors illuminated by industrial lamps, crews installed racks of instruments designed to monitor pressure, vibration, and temperature changes. These instruments formed the sensory network of Area 12, capturing the smallest signals during underground tests that would otherwise remain hidden in darkness. Before each experiment, diagnostic teams meticulously calibrated equipment, ensuring every cable, sensor, and relay would survive the microsecond violence to come. The preparations extended far beyond the tunnel walls, reaching across control trailers where scientists refined measurement plans for upcoming detonations. Engineers studied rock cores extracted from the mesa, examining how layers of welded tuff responded when compressed or fractured under mechanical stress. These analyses were essential, revealing where tunnels could safely extend and how the surrounding geology would influence shockwave containment. As planning intensified, seismic experts modeled expected ground motion, predicting how far vibrations would travel and how instruments should be shielded. Radiation specialists evaluated detection systems placed far from the shot chamber, anticipating each test's unique neutron, gamma, and thermal signatures. Every role, from geologist to electrician, intersected in a complex choreography designed to record split-second phenomena occurring deep within the mountain. When all preparations were complete, crews installed stemming barriers, layers of sand, gravel, and concrete, designed to seal the tunnel behind the device. These barriers acted as sacrificial shields, absorbing pressure surges and preventing radioactive gases from pushing back toward the tunnel portal. Once sealed, only remote cables connected human observers to the device, leaving the rest of the tunnel system in silent anticipation of the detonation. On test day, the mesa appeared outwardly calm, its steep cliffs catching the morning sun while personnel gathered inside control points miles away. Inside these steel-paneled rooms, scientists monitored countdown sequences, watching indicators that confirmed stability before the final firing command. When the device detonated, the first signal registered as a sharp seismic pulse, an engineered burst of force that rippled outward through the volcanic rock. In the shot cavity, temperatures soared so rapidly that rock briefly behaved like liquid, before cooling into a glassy shell fused by nuclear pressure. Instruments far up the tunnel recorded shock arrival times, radiation bursts, and structural responses, capturing data that would guide future weapons designs. After the event, the mesa often remained motionless, save for faint dust rising from seams or the subtle shift of equipment reacting to lingering vibrations. Only specialized inspection crews were authorized to approach tunnels after a test, carefully assessing whether the internal structure had compromised stability. If significant collapse occurred, the tunnel might be permanently sealed, creating a traceable layer in Area 12's evolving geological and operational history. In other cases, stable tunnels were rehabilitated for additional experiments, extending their service life in the ongoing sequence of underground operations. Each recovered dataset added to a growing archive of knowledge, refining predictive models used to evaluate underground testing worldwide. These records helped calibrate global seismic networks, enabling analysts to differentiate earthquakes from clandestine nuclear detonations. Far from public eyes, Area 12 thus contributed to both national defense and international monitoring science, shaping how underground tests were understood. Meanwhile, life at Camp 12 continued in steady rhythm, with crews rotating between meals, briefings, and long shifts inside the industrial confines of the mesa. Despite isolation, the camp developed its own culture, built around shared purpose, technical discipline, and the unique demands of nuclear research. Workers recalled crisp desert nights, quiet moments before dawn, and the relentless hum of generators that powered the complex's essential systems. Even in downtime, the sense of responsibility remained, as everyone understood that upcoming tests depended on precision, timing, and absolute reliability. Area 12's expanding tunnel network, combined with its growing role in Cold War strategy, transformed the Mesa into a hidden scientific stronghold. By the early 1960s, it had become one of the most active underground test regions in the United States, supporting research essential to national security. Deep inside Rainier Mesa, the rapid expansion of test operations demanded new tunnels, each carved with precision to host increasingly complex nuclear experiments. As Cold War pressures intensified, engineers pushed deeper into the mountain, creating chambers capable of containing higher yields without risking atmospheric leakage. Each new test required specialized alcoves where diagnostic racks, timing systems, and hardened enclosures were installed to protect sensitive electronics from shock damage. To support these operations, crews extended ventilation networks through narrow passageways, ensuring breathable air during long underground shifts in confined spaces. The growing infrastructure turned Area 12 into a multi-layered complex where mining, engineering, and scientific teams operated with coordinated discipline and secrecy. Geologists constantly evaluated stress patterns within the mesa, mapping fracture zones created by earlier detonations to ensure tunnel stability for future operations. These geological surveys were vital, as repeated underground tests subtly altered the internal structure of Rainier Mesa, reshaping natural fault lines over time. Engineers noted how certain rock layers absorbed shock more predictably, guiding decisions about where to place new test chambers for maximum containment safety. Meanwhile, advances in instrumentation increased the resolution of measurement systems, allowing scientists to capture data from deeper microsecond intervals of each blast. Teams calibrated sensors capable of recording thermal flux, high-energy neutrons, and X-ray bursts that occurred within fractions of a millisecond after detonation. The precision of these instruments transformed Area 12 into a research node, where each experiment generated insights crucial to refining nuclear weapon behavior. Control trailers outside the mesa tracked real-time signals through thousands of meters of shielded cable, interpreting rapid waveform spikes from the buried device. Analysts compared this data against predictive models, confirming whether the detonation behaved within expected performance parameters for the test series. If anomalies appeared, unexpected yield signatures, shock patterns, or neutron outputs, scientists initiated review cycles that shaped future experimental planning. Because every underground detonation carried immense responsibility, safety officers reviewed containment simulations repeatedly before approving a test sequence. Containment failure, even at small scales, risked releasing radioactive gases, so each barrier system was engineered with redundancy and strict tolerances. Hard rock plugs, gravel-packed seals, and concrete layers were positioned in calculated order, providing a controlled path for pressure dissipation within the tunnel. When preparations were complete, the device, often no larger than a suitcase, was transported through dim corridors lined with cables and anchored steel supports. Crews secured it inside a reinforced cavity, ensuring mechanical stability so the device remained precisely positioned during the moment of detonation. After final inspections, the long retreat began, with personnel withdrawing through echoing passageways until the mesa held only silent machinery waiting for activation. Above ground, security protocols intensified, restricting movement around portals and establishing perimeter controls to maintain safety and operational secrecy. During countdown sequences, tension inside control rooms contrasted sharply with the quiet desert outside, where the mesa stood motionless under open sky. When firing teams executed the final command, the hidden chamber erupted with immense energy, converting metal and rock into plasma within a confined split second. Shockwaves raced outward, slowed by the dense volcanic layers, while sensors captured the unfolding physics of the blast through meticulously designed cables. Moments later, the surface displayed only subtle signs: dust drifting from fractured ledges, faint vibrations underfoot, and equipment humming with recorded data. Inspection crews waited for clearance before approaching portals, evaluating air quality, radiation levels, and structural shifts to determine tunnel access feasibility. In many cases, tunnels were left intact and reused, but others collapsed or became unstable, forcing engineers to seal them and redirect operations to new sites. Through these cycles of excavation, testing, evaluation, and adaptation, Area 12 evolved into one of the most intensively studied geological structures in U.S. history. As underground testing expanded through the late 1960s, Area 12 became a central hub for experiments that required precise geological stability and controlled environments. Rainier Mesa's layered volcanic tuff provided a natural buffer, allowing engineers to conduct tests that demanded containment margins tighter than surface geology elsewhere allowed. Many of these experiments were designed not only to validate weapon designs, but to study how underground bursts affected structures, materials, and communication systems. Specialized equipment shelters were built deep inside tunnels, with reinforced steel frameworks engineered to withstand intense shock and electromagnetic interference. These enclosures held high-speed cameras, radiation sensors, and diagnostic modules capable of capturing transient effects occurring within microseconds of detonation. Because sensors could fail under extreme conditions, redundancy was essential, and every major measurement pathway included multiple independent signal channels. Scientists studying nuclear effects relied heavily on these overlapping systems to ensure the accuracy of data used in modeling weapon behavior and environmental impact. Meanwhile, new tunnel branches were excavated to support expanding test schedules, with crews often working night shifts to maintain project timelines in the remote Mesa. Fresh blasting operations echoed through the mountain, followed by controlled clearing phases that removed debris while preserving the structural integrity of the main corridors. Ventilation ducts pumped filtered air through the tunnels, carrying dust and fumes out of the mountain and ensuring safe working conditions for miners and technicians. Outside, Camp 12 evolved into a self-contained outpost equipped with workshops, medical facilities, storage yards, and temporary housing for rotating personnel. The camp's isolation fostered a tight-knit environment where scientists and workers shared meals, discussed technical challenges, and prepared for the next test cycle. Despite the demanding schedule, crews maintained strict adherence to safety protocols, understanding that even small lapses could compromise containment reliability. In the cold months, snow blanketed the mesa, turning access roads into hazardous paths that required specialized vehicles and constant monitoring by support teams. Winter operations tested both equipment durability and personnel endurance, yet the mission continued uninterrupted due to the strategic importance of the facility. Throughout these years, seismic monitoring arrays were expanded both on and off the test site, enabling researchers to track underground shock propagation in detail. The data gathered from these arrays refined global understanding of how underground explosions imprint seismic signatures distinguishable from natural earthquakes. Such knowledge proved essential not only for domestic safety, but for international treaty verification efforts, which depended on the ability to detect covert tests worldwide. Area 12 thus served as a scientific training ground where real underground detonations allowed researchers to validate technologies later used in global monitoring networks. Every shot produced a unique waveform pattern shaped by Mesa geology, providing researchers with comparative data sets that deepened understanding of seismic behavior. Radiological containment studies also advanced, with environmental teams measuring seepage pathways and natural barriers that prevented radioactive gases from migrating upward. These studies confirmed that Rainier Mesa's geological composition effectively trapped most byproducts, reinforcing its role as a preferred site for sensitive underground work. Over time, engineers developed a predictive understanding of how tunnel length, cross-sectional shape, and rock density influenced containment efficiency. This refinement allowed planners to optimize test layouts, reducing the risk of surface releases and guiding decisions on where future detonations should be positioned. By the early 1970s, the combination of enhanced instrumentation, geological expertise, and operational discipline made Area 12 one of the most advanced underground test facilities in the Western world. Its tunnels, though hidden from public view, functioned as corridors of high-stakes research where the physics of containment and the realities of nuclear strategy converged. As U.S. underground testing entered the mid-1970s, Area 12 reached peak operational intensity, with multiple tunnel branches supporting parallel nuclear experiments. New diagnostic technologies emerged, allowing scientists to record finer details of radiation transport, neutron behavior, and high-pressure shock dynamics deep within the Mesa. Electromagnetic pulse research became increasingly important, prompting installation of hardened instrumentation modules capable of withstanding intense transient fields. Engineers developed shielding materials and cable routing strategies to prevent signal corruption, ensuring clean data transmission from chambers near the shot point. These refinements built on lessons learned from earlier tests, demonstrating how underground environments could reliably host experiments once thought too delicate or hazardous. Area 12's tunnels gradually transformed into an intricate scientific ecosystem, where each section was optimized for specific measurements or containment requirements. Some chambers held test assemblies focused on weapon reliability, while others hosted research on how underground detonations interacted with military equipment. In many operations, engineers exposed prototype systems to controlled levels of high-energy radiation to evaluate survivability under extreme nuclear conditions. Such experiments were vital for understanding how battlefield technologies would function during potential nuclear conflicts, informing long-term defense planning. Beyond weapons development, Area 12 contributed to civil defense research, with tests designed to study structural resilience and material response in severe shock regimes. These projects relied on precision measurements, requiring vast arrays of sensors positioned along the tunnel network to record shock gradients and material deformation. Each installation demanded meticulous timing alignment, as signals arriving microseconds apart revealed crucial information about explosive energy distribution. Control rooms filled with oscilloscopes, reel-to-reel data systems, and early digital processors captured these signals, converting raw pulses into analyzable waveforms. Scientists later reconstructed three-dimensional models of underground cavities formed by detonations, correlating structural patterns with yield estimates and containment performance. This work significantly improved predictive capabilities, allowing future tests to be designed with greater accuracy regarding expected tunnel deformation and shock propagation. Meanwhile, continuous monitoring of Rainier Mesa revealed that repeated detonations subtly altered stress fields, necessitating ongoing safety evaluations and geotechnical studies. Survey teams scanned the surface for sink features, fissures, and subsidence zones, documenting any new instability that might affect operational planning. Their findings guided tunnel placement decisions, ensuring new test branches avoided compromised zones while leveraging intact geological strength. Through this dynamic process, Area 12 remained a living system, one shaped by both human engineering and the natural geological responses of the Mesa itself. Camp 12 adapted to these demands as well, expanding storage capacity, communication links, and personnel facilities to support the increasing complexity of operations. Rotating crews included miners, electricians, physicists, health physicists, safety officers, and logistics specialists, each contributing essential expertise. Despite strict compartmentalization of information, teamwork remained critical, with each group relying on others to maintain the high standards required for safe testing. At night, lights from the camp cast long shadows across the plateau, while the tunnels below held steady in darkness, waiting for the next cycle of activity. Visitors arriving on official assignments often described Area 12 as both industrial and otherworldly, a place where advanced science unfolded inside a mountain. Yet little of this reached the public, as test schedules, yields, and technical results remained tightly protected within classified programs. What filtered into public knowledge usually came as brief references in DOE summaries or seismic bulletins, offering only glimpses of the extensive work beneath Rainier Mesa. Despite limited visibility, Area 12 played a defining role in ensuring that U.S. underground test efforts remained both scientifically rigorous and internationally compliant. Its contribution to containment science, seismic research, and nuclear effects analysis positioned it as a cornerstone of Cold War underground testing strategy. Even as global attitudes toward nuclear weapons shifted, the Mesa continued to host experiments essential for understanding underground phenomena beyond military contexts. By the early 1980s, Area 12 had become one of the most advanced underground research sites in the United States, supporting an evolving range of nuclear-related studies. Although full-scale detonations continued, an increasing share of work focused on precision diagnostics, materials research, and experiments supporting treaty verification. This shift reflected broader international pressures, as nations sought to regulate nuclear testing while still gathering essential scientific and engineering data. Area 12's tunnels provided controlled environments where small-scale devices and instrument packages could be studied without significant atmospheric consequence. Enhanced computational models emerged during this era, allowing scientists to simulate nuclear effects with greater accuracy, supported by real data from Mesa experiments. These simulations required constant calibration, and Area 12 remained indispensable as it supplied the high-fidelity measurements necessary to validate new predictive tools. Tunnel operations evolved as well, incorporating updated drilling methods, improved ground support systems, and modern monitoring equipment to track geological stability. Geotechnical teams used laser ranging devices and precision extensometers to measure subtle rock movements caused by previous detonation cycles. The results were compared with historical records, offering insights into how repeated underground stress altered fracture networks and long-term structural reliability. At the same time, environmental monitoring expanded across the Mesa, tracking potential gas migration paths and verifying that containment systems performed as intended. These evaluations were essential for demonstrating compliance with environmental standards introduced during the late Cold War period, particularly in sensitive test regions. Health physics teams routinely surveyed workspaces, sampling air, soil, and structural dust to ensure radiation exposure levels remained within safe operational limits. Instrument packages installed across Rainier Mesa transmitted continuous data, forming a protective network that validated the Mesa's overall environmental condition. In control facilities, advances in data acquisition shifted testing workflows from analog recorders to hybrid and fully digital systems that improved signal clarity. Scientists could now analyze waveform signatures with higher precision, revealing minute variations that offered deeper understanding of underground energy transfer. This enhanced analytical capability allowed researchers to draw clearer distinctions between cavity collapse, chimney formation, and long-term subsurface settling. Such distinctions were crucial not only for engineering safety, but also for national security, as they informed global detection systems used to identify illicit testing. Area 12's contribution to seismic verification science became increasingly important as nuclear agreements placed greater emphasis on monitoring below-ground events. International observers relied on comparative datasets generated at Rainier Mesa to refine algorithms capable of separating natural seismic activity from man-made explosions. Within the tunnels, new test series explored how different geological formations reacted to specialized explosive configurations intended for research purposes. These studies helped expand knowledge of how underground pressure waves behaved in complex rock environments, strengthening predictive confidence for future operations. Meanwhile, logistical operations continued at Camp 12, which supported transport vehicles, maintenance shops, and temporary housing for scientists on rotating assignments. The camp's remote setting provided both advantages and challenges. Operational security was strong, but supply chains had to be meticulously managed for efficiency. Regular deliveries brought fuel, equipment, instrumentation supplies, and food, sustaining a workforce that moved between the mountain's interior and surface facilities. During peak activity, the camp functioned like a small industrial town, with shifts organized to maintain tunnel access, control room staffing, and around-the-clock monitoring. Despite the intensely technical atmosphere, workers recalled moments of quiet beauty, sunsets over the desert valleys and winter storms sweeping across the plateau. These scenes contrasted sharply with the high-energy experiments unfolding beneath their feet, emphasizing the dual nature of life atop Rainier Mesa. Although public curiosity surrounding nuclear work increased during this period, most details of Area 12 operations remained classified, known only within specialized circles. The secrecy was not intended to fuel mystery, but to protect sensitive data, equipment specifications, and experimental methods critical to national security. Even so, occasional declassifications revealed glimpses of the facility's complexity, including tunnel diagrams, test inventories, and geological assessments. These documents confirmed what insiders long understood, that Area 12 stood as a uniquely engineered environment where science, geology, and defense converged underground. As the Cold War entered its final decade, Area 12 continued to support some of the most specialized underground research conducted anywhere in the United States. Many experiments shifted toward studying weapons safety features, ensuring devices would behave predictably under extreme conditions without unintended detonation. These tests required extraordinary precision, involving instrument arrays tuned to detect faint phenomena that occurred well before the main explosive sequence. Scientists placed diagnostic components in hardened alcoves, carefully positioning sensors to withstand electromagnetic shock and rapid temperature fluctuations. Because many safety studies involved subcritical configurations, the data collected helped refine understanding of nuclear materials without producing full-yield reactions. This capability allowed researchers to gather essential insights while supporting global trends toward limiting the scale and frequency of underground detonations. At the same time, Area 12 contributed to investigations of how underground explosions affected infrastructure, from buried communication lines to structural foundations. Engineers studied how shockwaves traveled through varying densities of volcanic tuff, producing detailed models used to evaluate potential impacts on hardened facilities. These findings proved valuable not only for military planning, but also for civilian engineering fields concerned with seismic resilience and underground construction. Across the Mesa, tunnel crews continued expanding branches to accommodate evolving scientific requirements, often working in parallel with ongoing test preparations. New monitoring systems incorporated fiber optic lines, allowing high-bandwidth transmission of data sets that captured multiple energy components in real time. Such advances marked a transition from analog-heavy workflows to more modern, digitally integrated research environments distributed throughout the Mesa. Meanwhile, global geopolitics shifted as arms control negotiations accelerated, prompting closer scrutiny of underground test practices at sites like Area 12. Verification protocols became increasingly important, and analysts worldwide studied seismic signatures recorded from Nevada to calibrate international monitoring standards. Area 12's diverse geological formations made it ideal for such work, offering natural variations that helped refine discriminants separating tests from natural quakes. As the scientific community leveraged these insights, Rainier Mesa effectively served as a benchmark region for evaluating global seismic reporting capabilities. Back inside the mountain, environmental teams maintained vigilant monitoring programs, measuring air samples, tunnel atmospheres, and potential radionuclide pathways. Their data consistently demonstrated that containment at Area 12 performed within accepted safety margins, supporting continued use of the Mesa for controlled research. Camp 12 operated steadily throughout this period, serving as the logistical heart of the facility, housing personnel and coordinating daily technical operations. Its workshops repaired drilling machinery, maintained transport vehicles, and provided storage for specialized sensors, cables, and protective equipment. During heavy test schedules, the camp buzzed with activity as multiple teams prepared equipment, analyzed incoming data, and organized next-phase operations. Despite the seriousness of the work, downtime offered brief moments of camaraderie, shared meals, quiet conversations, or watching desert storms travel across the horizon. These human elements contrasted with the deeply technical and often classified nature of the mission unfolding inside the Mesa's hidden corridors. As test yields decreased in accordance with emerging international agreements, the focus shifted even more toward precision rather than explosive power. Small-scale experiments became critical, generating high-resolution data that informed advanced computational models, replacing many legacy full-yield tests. Even with reduced explosive energy, underground experiments required strict containment and careful sequencing to ensure the Mesa's long-term structural integrity. Geologists evaluated every new project, assessing how additional stress might interact with pre-existing cavities, collapsed chimneys, and fracture systems. These studies helped planners avoid compromised areas, steering new operations into zones where rock strength remained consistent with containment requirements. By the early 1990s, Area 12 had accumulated decades of scientific records, geological surveys, and operational experience unmatched by most underground facilities worldwide. By the early 1990s, global attention turned sharply toward nuclear testing practices, and the United States prepared for a future shaped by emerging test limitations. As discussions intensified around comprehensive test bans, Area 12 entered a transitional period where its deep expertise in underground operations remained vital. Rather than halting activity abruptly, scientists used the Mesa's tunnels to conduct final rounds of high-value experiments aimed at refining long-term stockpile stewardship. These experiments supported programs designed to ensure existing nuclear devices would remain safe, secure, and reliable without requiring further full-scale detonations. Advanced subcritical tests, high-energy physics measurements, and detailed materials studies all relied on the isolated, controlled environment provided by Area 12. Researchers gathered precise data on plutonium behavior, explosive lens performance, and dynamic stress interactions essential for predictive modeling efforts. These insights laid critical groundwork for computational simulation programs that later became the backbone of U.S. nuclear readiness after full testing ceased. Within the tunnels, instrumentation teams integrated new sensor technologies capable of capturing signals that analog systems of earlier decades could not detect. Fiber optic diagnostics offered clearer waveforms, allowing physicists to observe subtle particle interactions previously lost within analog noise levels. The shift toward non-explosive or low-yield configurations reduced mechanical stress on the Mesa, though crews still monitored tunnel stability with meticulous detail. Geotechnical experts assessed the mountain's long-term condition, documenting how decades of testing had reshaped fracture networks and localized stress zones. Their evaluations informed closure plans and guided decisions about which tunnels could be safely maintained, monitored, or sealed following program transitions. Environmental monitoring intensified as well, ensuring that the eventual reduction in operations coincided with thorough assessment of the site's radiological profile. Air samples from former test corridors, soil readings from surface features, and groundwater surveys all contributed to a comprehensive environmental baseline. These efforts reflected a growing national emphasis on responsible stewardship of former nuclear test facilities, balancing scientific legacy with modern safety standards. At Camp 12, daily life began to change as staffing levels gradually decreased and long-standing operations prepared for a future with fewer active testing missions. Workshops shifted focus from heavy equipment support to maintenance of monitoring systems, record archiving, and facility preservation tasks. Despite the winding down of large-scale operations, the camp remained active, providing accommodations and logistical support for ongoing scientific evaluations. Many personnel who had spent decades at the Mesa described this era as both reflective and technically demanding, requiring careful planning for long-term site management. Old tunnels were mapped, photographed, and documented, with engineers recording structural conditions to support future geological or environmental studies. These records became invaluable references, capturing the internal layout of chambers, alcoves, and instrumentation galleries carved throughout the mountain. Meanwhile, national security planners evaluated how portions of Area 12 could be repurposed for training missions linked to nuclear emergency response. The Mesa's isolation, controlled infrastructure, and history of radiological work made it an ideal venue for exercises requiring realistic but safely managed conditions. Organizations involved in emergency preparedness used the site to simulate scenarios involving hazardous materials, technical containment, and field operations. This new mission ensured Area 12 would not simply fade into obscurity, but would remain an active component of the broader national security landscape. Although underground nuclear detonations ceased in 1992, the facility's scientific and operational legacy continued to influence modern nuclear policy and research. Area 12 became a symbol of transition, shifting from a high-intensity testing complex into a multifunctional site supporting training, monitoring, and historical evaluation. Its tunnels, once filled with diagnostic racks and explosive assemblies, now served as preserved evidence of an era defined by subterranean experimentation. Even sealed corridors retained their significance, offering future researchers a unique geological archive shaped by the forces of controlled nuclear detonations. The end of full-scale testing marked not an erasure of Area 12's importance, but a shift toward understanding its place within the evolving framework of nuclear science. Today, Area 12 remains one of the least understood sections of the Nevada National Security Site, its history preserved in technical archives rather than public memory. The Mesa still holds sealed tunnel portals, weathered structures, and remnants of an infrastructure built to support decades of controlled underground research. Although the chambers once echoed with drilling equipment and diagnostic preparations, they now stand as engineered voids deep within the volcanic layers of Rainier Mesa. Environmental teams continue to monitor the region, tracking geological stability, residual radiation levels, and long-term structural behavior within the abandoned branches. These measurements provide valuable insight into how heavily modified subsurface environments evolve after intense periods of underground testing activity. The data also inform broader national stewardship programs, helping guide maintenance strategies for legacy test sites across the American nuclear complex. Meanwhile, selective portions of Area 12 remain active, supporting training missions related to nuclear emergency response, hazardous material management, and field operations. Teams from various federal agencies use the site because of its isolation, harsh terrain, and existing safety infrastructure, which together offer realistic conditions for high-risk drills. These exercises often simulate complex incidents such as radiological releases, structural failures, or technical containment scenarios requiring coordinated field response. By leveraging an already secure environment, trainers can rehearse critical procedures without exposing the public to risk or revealing sensitive operational methods. In this capacity, Area 12 has transitioned from a purely experimental facility into a hybrid operational zone blending historical significance with modern national security needs. Yet its deeper story, those decades of underground detonations, engineering breakthroughs, and seismic discoveries, remains overshadowed by more famous test regions. Unlike atmospheric test sites that produce dramatic images, Area 12 generated data sets, seismic traces, and engineering diagrams stored far from public view. But for scientists and engineers who worked there, the Mesa was a frontier of precision, a place where controlled nuclear energy met rock, science, and calculation. They remember long tunnels disappearing into darkness, the hum of diagnostic racks, and the silence that followed each detonation as data began to stream in. These memories reveal the human side of a facility often reduced to technical summaries, a workforce that combined mining grit with scientific rigor deep beneath the earth. The legacy of Area 12 also lives on through global nuclear monitoring systems, many of which were calibrated using information gathered from its underground events. Seismic signatures recorded under Rainier Mesa helped build the foundations for international verification networks capable of detecting covert nuclear testing worldwide. In this way, the Mesa's influence extends far beyond Nevada, shaping tools used to monitor global compliance with modern arms control agreements. Even sealed chambers continue to hold scientific value, offering researchers a unique archive of how repeated underground detonations reshape geological structures. These formations, collapsed chimneys, stress fractures, and fused glass cavities, represent rare natural laboratories preserved by time and restricted access. Future studies may someday reveal how these features evolve over centuries, providing insight into long-term subsurface dynamics created by human engineering. For historians, Area 12 stands as a reminder that much of the Cold War unfolded underground, shielded by layers of rock rather than broadcast by towering mushroom clouds. Its contributions were measured not in photographs but in pressure curves, neutron flux recordings, and seismic charts capturing moments of controlled devastation. Though the site never entered popular culture, its impact on nuclear science, test containment methods, and verification technologies remains substantial and enduring. Rainier Mesa's tunnels symbolize a chapter of American history defined by secrecy, precision, and the pursuit of understanding forces too powerful to release into open air. They reflect an era when scientists and engineers carved laboratories into mountains, turning geology into both shield and instrument for study of the nuclear age. Today, the quiet landscape reveals little of the intense activity once hidden inside, yet its silence underscores how effectively the Mesa absorbed decades of experimentation. As the world continues to grapple with nuclear risk and technological change, the lessons drawn from Area 12 persist, guiding modern strategy and safety practices. Its story, though seldom told, remains a testament to what happens when scientific ambition, national security, and the subterranean world converge under a single Mesa. Area 12 endures not as a relic, but as a quiet witness, a forgotten facility whose deepest secrets were written in rock, radiation, and the relentless pursuit of containment.